Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Dialogue with the Youth. So on Gunjur Online TV. Today, the date is 19th of February 2021 and Friday. The time in Leeds in United Kingdom is about 7 o'clock, and the Gambia, it's the same time, I think, is 7 o'clock. Eastern time is about 2 o'clock. Once again, we don't normally come on Fridays, if you remember, we do Wednesdays and Thursdays. But because our Gambia, our motherland, is 56 years today since we've had our independence. And this is a very important time in our country to talk about what happened yesterday and today, and to analyze the things, political, economical, social, we can name it, about our current Gambia. And we can reflect and give thanks to our founding fathers, who, despite their shortcomings, did fantastically well, probably better than us, even though some of the historical buttons was passed from them to us, but they did well to have a Gambia. It's not perfect, but it was going. And we have to have somebody who is a towering genius, I can say Gambia's finest, to discuss these issues. Our topic today will be the PESTLE analysis, that is political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental analysis of Gambia at 56. And I have Mr. Njie, a young Gambian economist, one of Gambia's finest, with unwavering energy. Not his genius that took him where he is his dedication, his energy to fight for the common good across Gambian landscape, to fight for justice, to fight against tribalism, to fight against the ills and the failing and lack of accountabilities in our country, to fight for environmental justice. If you follow Nyang Njie, you will see him silently sometimes walking in companion silence on the sandy beaches of the Gambia, in the midst of cacophony of sounds from the waves. If you follow Nyang Njie, you will see him fraternizing with the leafy rural Gambia in companion silence. If you follow Nyang Njie, you will see him exploring the Bolong, the rivers, the seas of the pristine Gambia all along. So virtually in the restaurants, if you want to see him sometimes, promoting Gambia. So I don't know whether we know it, but he's one of the key ambassadors that is marketing the modern Gambia, if you follow it. And this is a towering giant that I have to discuss these issues with me. Welcome, Mr. Njie, to Dialogue with the Youth Show on Gunjur Online TV. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure having me, and good evening to all the viewers wherever they are.
Thank you so much, Nyang. Since this is the first time you are on Gunjur Online, we will speak mostly in English. But if you want to just put in any Gambian language, just feel free. And because I follow your writings and I can see some proverbs from Wall of Proverbs and all those things which I'm learning. I'm improving my. And now I wanted to tell Janneh to play Lydia Janneh for me first.
Okay.
And yeah, because I catch that there's something you really relate to as a Gambian, because it's a homemade national anthem and is full of wisdom and is full of something that will be fantastic. So feel free to speak anyhow you want, any language, anyway. So today is yesterday Gambia is 56 years old, and we're going to discuss about, in the political space, we're going to government policies, government political stability, corruptions, and economic growth, inflation, unemployment rate. We're going to talk about, if time allows us. And when we come to the social, we will talk about tribalism, cultural barriers, health and safety in employment, agriculture, sorry, age distributions, and of course the backward thing anyway, and the technological, we'll talk about the internet, technological awareness or technological incentives, that are in the country, environmental issues, and the impact it will have in our countries anyway. And I think we will come to legal if time allow us. But if we can have this from the eye of youth, because this platform is purposely to kind of motivate and encourage youth to so that they can have a platform where they can stay in our country and have a living livelihood that will benefit us, that will benefit the country and benefit our youths also. So Nyang Njie, welcome. I'm going to start. What does Gambia at 56 means to you? That's your own question. I'm taking your question back to you again. What does it mean to you?
Well, generally, independence is a time for stock taking, and independence should be a time for a somber reflection. Somber reflection in the sense that most countries fought for them to have what we call independence. But for Gambia, it was peacefully negotiated. But the people that peacefully negotiated our independence had a vision. The vision that they had was to see a small, poor country with limited resources, but with diverse people to come together, try and live in harmony, and make sure that they do the most with the little they had. 1965 to 2021 may be a long time in a human's life, but it's a short time in the life of a nation, considering the UK, considering the US, which are centuries old. But then again, we expect too much from ourselves because we are comparing and benchmarking ourselves to other nations, such as the Rwandas, such as the South Africas. So we can do better and we should do better. But have we done better? The answer is no. So I look at Gambia at 56, and I had a thought-provoking slogan or cliche: independence or dependence. Well, if I believe that Gambia is independent, I will look at how we are living and I will see that our life is not independent, because the Wolofs will say mun sa bopa, that is to be independent. Moy nga mom sa bopa means you have control of yourself and your destiny. So mome sa bopa danga gom sa bopa, you believe in yourself. If you believe in yourself, danga gadu sa bopa, you take care of self. That is the essence of independence. So I ask myself, are we independent? Theoretically on paper, yes, but practically, no. Then it goes to dependence. What is being dependent? Dependent is you rely on someone or you rely on something. And if I look at Gambia, our budget to start with is funded and financed by multilaterals, the World Banks, the African Development Bank, the Islamic Development Bank, and other donors. So we are not independent. There is nothing wrong with taking a loan, but there is something relying on a handout to eat. So the essence of independence is yet to be lived by us, and we need to find a way to live with what we have, where we are, when we can. Then the essence of independence will make sense. I will also borrow from Kwame Nkrumah. When Ghana was independent, most Ghanaians were happy, jubilating. He said, no, the independence of Ghana is meaningless until and unless it is linked with the total independence of Africa. So our independence is meaningless if we are not willing to have a broader view of what independence is all about. Independence is about controlling your destiny, deciding how you want to live, and what you want to do when you want it, not when others want you to do it. So that's why I said it's a time for a somber reflection.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Nyanja. That's really, really clear. But before we delve deeper into the political, the economical consequences of Gambia at 56, we will regress to some of the characters, just to mention them, not in detail, about, that made Gambia at 56 possible. Because we are here, we have to. Some of the names that are not born today die. They will not die. They will be embalmed in the history of the Gambia forever. But the youth, the kids don't know them, and what they know is, Yaya Jammeh and Barrow and Yaya Jammeh and Barrow. Since we are not teaching history and we are not good at relating to our kids and talk to them about our history, they are not perfect. We will come to that. But anytime we come back to talk about the modern Gambia, we have to regress and talk about some of the characters that made or who made the Gambia possible. Just briefly mention them anyway, and I will let us give our gratitude to them for their endeavor, because we should know how difficult it is. We are struggling today, how they carve out this Gambia with all summer, because I saw one of your posts, and you say Gambia may be a thorn in the flesh of our big neighbor Senegal. So you can see those influences playing back in 1960s and 19 whatever. So go ahead, Nyang Njie.
Well, thanks once again. There are two sets, or actually there are three sets of Gambians that made independence happen. One person and one person stood in his own pedestal and in his own mantle and in his own space. Sir Edward Francis Small, or Edward Francis Small.
Mm-hmm.
Edward Francis Small is probably the most influential Gambian. Edward Francis Small is probably the biggest and greatest agitator of independence. Edward Francis Small was a Gambian, owner of newspapers, a clergy who decided not to be roped and follow the path to agitation that brought the eventual independence of the Gambia. Gambians don't know, but there was a Balangar incident, an incident in the history called the Balangar Incident, where Edward Francis Small said, there will be no taxation without representation.
Yes.
And basically, he was sent out of the country for a while and came back. And when he came back, he started a trade union, trying to tell the colonials that, look, we deserve to have a life of dignity. And this life of dignity, we must have a voice in it. That was what Edward Francis Small did. And that led to a lot of Gambians, through his newspapers and writings, started the work of agitation. The likes of Emi Jallo and others, they call Jallo Jallo or Jallo Union. Then, after that, we have the political leadership. The political leadership started with a woman, and J.C. Faye. J.C. Faye set up the first party in the Gambia. Then there was a lady called St. Clair Jew. She formed the first political party called GPP by a woman. Thereafter, the Sanjali Bojangs were in the picture, and they helped created a party called the PPP, which David Kwesi Jawara of blessed memory led. Then you had the Muslim Alliance of IBM Gaba Jahumpa. Then you have the United Party of Per Njie. Then you had chiefs like Omar Mbake, you have people like Amankanyi. These were all important people. Hausum Semega Janneh. They went to Marlborough House between the summers of, I think, 1962 to 64, which culminated in 65 for us to have our eventual independence. Thereafter, in 1970, we had our Republican status. Some people even question whether 1970 is our independence, because there's a difference between self-rule and independence. So, but then again, I choose 1965 as the date of independence but it was more of self-rule than, independence as we know the word to be independent. So therefore, yeah, the Sanjali Bojangs, the P.S. Njie, the David Kwesi Jawaras, the Omar Mbakes, the J.C. Fais, the IBM Gaba Jahumpa played a very important and pivotal role in ushering what we call independence in the Gambia.
Thank you so much for that historical tour de force, so that kids like myself and other people under me will understand where we are coming from as Gambian to celebrate and talk about some of the salient and important events in our country. And you say our founding fathers mean well, but their shortcomings was that they were not cut out to be nation builders, but they have performed diligently given the development toolkit and at their disposal. That said, life has to go on, and there is still room for improvement, and it starts with love for country, respect for each other, and a society that respects what people brings to the table. In the founding fathers, not nation builders. A bit confusing. Can you clarify?
You see, we need to understand one thing. Building a nation requires a toolkit and a skill set. But our founding fathers, they had the heart, they had the will, they had the guts to make sure the birth of the improbable nation, because everyone doubted the economic and political viability of Gambia. Even our colonial masters didn't believe Gambia as a state can go ahead. And that's why there was a book by Berkeley Rice called Enter Gambia, The Birth of an Improbable Nation. A lot of people read this book, but they don't read it to understand what Berkeley Rice set out to do. Berkeley Rice belonged to a school of thought that believed Gambia should not have been a nation. So all along in his book, he tried to explain why Gambia should not be. But unfortunately, people didn't get to see his point, because the title of the book is what Berkeley Rice tried to justify from the first page to the last, thereby denigrating anyone and everyone he came across, whether it was Modu Musanjai, whether it was P.S. Njie, all the characters in the book. Basically, he had an opinion of them that stated that if Gambia is to be run by these people, we may not see a Gambia that's viable. And that was the essence of his writing. And that was the essence of what he set out to do. But like I'll go back, our founding fathers, well-intended people. You look at IBM Gaba Jahumpa, a great Gambian, a great Pan-Africanist. But building a nation requires a toolkit and a skill set. And like I said, great people, well-intentioned, but they didn't have what it takes. Even Dawda Jawara, may his soul rest in peace. Some people are not fair with him in the sense that they don't believe that he has done well for Gambia. Well, I said to them, under the prevailing circumstances that he led Gambia with and the resources availed to him, he has done well for country. But nation builders of today will say that Jawara could have done more. Well, I'm of the view that he has done exceptionally well with what he had and also the heart that he had at the time. See, our grandparents, our forefathers were contented with the life of peasantry. They were ambitious, but their ambition wasn't coined and casted on material being. So if you look at them, you look at neighbors, Senegal, we were different because the exposures were different, the orientations were different, and their worldview were different. So a lot of people will say we only had few schools for over 40 odd years of independence. Well, that's why I said they were not nation builders. Their ambitions were tamed because of how they were brought up. Their ambitions were tamed because of the limited and scarce resources we had. Their ambitions were tamed because of the environment they grew up in, which didn't give them the opportunity to dream and dream big. But that doesn't mean that they didn't mean well for country. They were just not nation builders.
Yes, thank you so much for clarifying that. And you said the Gambia, the poor Gambia, the Gambia started on the poor focal contract that saw the widening of the income gap and opportunities for socio-economic mobility or mobility. Yes, this amplified the character and the contempt held in mainstream society and gave rise to that's July 22, July 22nd, 1994. We are cruising slowly from the founding fathers, to intermediate what happened, and that led to J2022. Is that
Yes.
a fair, just from the founding fathers, or from independence to where we are?
Well, the context is we need to understand from whence we came as a nation. Gambia was an agrarian society. This agrarian society happened to have a beacon called Banjul. Banjul was the center of politics, center of power, center of economic dominion. Most of the people that were well-to-do, yes, there were a few well-to-do outside in the protectorate, but most of the well-to-do Gambians were within what we call Banjul and mostly in the Combos, the Pasanjali Bojans. So the poor social contract we inherited from our forefathers during, independence, gave birth to July 1994. Why? There was a widening gap between the haves and the have-nots. And Yahya Jammeh exploited this social gap, and thereby he got a lot of support. People wanted to support him because they were able to relate with the script and the story he sold, that there is a group of Gambians living good and an overwhelming not living good. So that in itself helped him, and people gravitated to it. People bought the idea, and that made Yahya Jammeh to have an overwhelming support, and that support gave him the opportunity to sell the package that July 22nd is the soldiers with a difference, and these soldiers with a difference are going to redeem Gambia and give the poor Gambians hope and a better life. But I believe that wasn't the case, and I think the verdict is out, and we have all seen what social political experiment Yahya Jammeh had, and how Gambians have lived a horrible life based on this political experience.
Yes, that was a time in Gambia's history that we don't want to regress to the time of Yahya Jammeh. Once again, we are talking about the PESTLE analysis of the Gambia at 56. Here we are going to talk about the political, the economical, the social, the technological, the environmental, and the legal landscape of the Gambia. And I am discussing these issues with one of Gambia's budding intellectuals, one of Gambian finest, who cut across different areas. He is completely outside the conventional parameter of Gambian intellectualism. This is Nyang Njie, an environmentalist. This is Nyang Njie, who tours and market the Gambia in his thoughts sometimes. And I think when we have time, he will tell us, because some of the places I see him there, I've never had them. I get embarrassed seeing him, creeping and trapping in the forest and sailing the Mother Gambia, and like nobody else, Nyang Njie, where you are is so important. I remember as a young man, I had the Jontas big photo in my house, and I regret that. I wish I don't do that anyway. I don't even want to talk about that anyway. But the catastrophic, 22 years we experienced under Yahya Jammeh, and you went on to say, well, concise. But before that, you said the Woloffs, the good old Reverend J.C. Fife equally has a party that centered around religion. the Wolofs had their kingmaker and fiefdom in at the United Party of P.S. Njie. Well, these impediments were the building blocks of the new Gambia of 1965. But you want to say that politics thereafter fashioned itself on the interest group listed above, and that brought about the death of nationalism before it even got a chance to sprawl. Mr. Nyang Njie, that's powerful, you know.
It's a fact. You see, Gambia as a country lack what you call a national identity. Gambians, if you go to Senegal today, you happen to see a Senegalese, and you say, yo langa, man Senegalela. You come to Gambia, yo langa, man sosela wai badibula joge, man sosela wai wa kombola. So yes, we Gambians have broken themselves down into very small fragments that really don't give us a national cohesion, and that doesn't give us a national identity. Per Sarjai, a great politician, a great nationalist, someone who loved country, but his power base was within the Wolofs, to the point there was a slogan that stated Salum Het, meaning Per Sarjai and the United Party, as important and influential as they were in the Gambian context, political context, it centered around real, how you call it, ethnicity. Unfortunately, JC5, his party, centered around religion, Catholicism. So most of the people that supported him were from the church. JC5, Gambia Muslim Congress or Muslim Alliance, whatever, it centered around religion. David Kwesi Jawara, People's Protectorate Party, talking about a group of people from the protectorate. We never had politicians who happen to have a broad national appeal. And it's not their fault. It is what has been inherited from the colonials. Colonials were interested in dividing and ruling us. Therefore, they wanted to keep us in small clusters of vested interest groups. And that gave them dominion over us, and that helped promote stability for them. So the people that inherited from the colonials continued the playbook played by the politician, and that's by the colonials, sorry. And that's why our politics up to today, 2021, 56 years after independence, it's still a politics of personality and not a politics of issues, for the simple fact that our politicians, I'm sorry to say, are very selfish. They believe that for them to have control, they need to have dominion over people. For them to have dominion over people, they need to invoke our emotions. And these emotions are mostly tribal driven, regional driven, or religion driven. And this is not good for the Gambia. And I always give people a good, simple example of Leopold Sedar Senghor. Leopold Sedar Senghor is a minority in Senegal in 1950, which was a Christian. Leopold Sedar Senghor was a minority once again by being a Serer. Yet still he rose and became a president in a country where it was an overwhelming majority of Muslims made up by Tijanias and Murids, and predominantly a Wolof society. What did that show us or teach us? It teaches or taught us that in Senegal, national identity superseded personal identity. And that's what made the Senegalese a progressive group of people relative to the Gambia. And that's why Senegalese politics is few notches higher than Gambian politics, because they understand issues and their politics revolves around issues.
Thank you so much, Nyang Njie. Once again, Ben, I will read out some of the comments our listeners are saying. Our Kinte says, Assalamu alaikum and gentlemen. Sally M. Lo says, Assalamu alaikum, educative program. Kadi Jamme says, interested topic to EB. I agree with Nyang Njie. Our founding fathers had the right interest and the drive to build a nation, but one will argue that the skill set and resources was somehow lacking. Although we have gained independence, but far from the actual reality of independent country, which is so important. Nyang, but Senegal, is just not coincident. I was reading, say, Ante Jobs, Black Africa, and where he was coming from, and the drive he was kind of peddling and generating, in order to be Senegal like one. Senegalese will say, I'm a Senegalese. You'd hardly say I'm a Wolof, I'm a Mandinka, and all those things. And sometimes, I see myself in the funny situation. I'm a sculptural giant whose grandmom is a Fula from Kosemar, and still I can only speak Mandinka because we settled in Gunjur. Some of my sisters in Banjul, the sculpturals are Wolofs there. So, and sometimes if I'm in Gunjur, they will call me strangers, and somebody in Banjul will call me Sose. So this is so confusing. This define, the compendium of problems Gambia is facing. But we are going to discuss this under our social issues. But you went on, Mr. Njie, and say, well, concise has been destitute in the Gambia at the behest of political relevance and material possession. I know this has been predicated, something came before you said that, but that's so important. I want you to elaborate on that.
Well, what we are seeing in Gambia recently is nothing new in politics, in the Gambian context. I call it the political transfer window, where we see the likes of Sidin Jai, Suku Singates, moving from one party to another and trying to be strange bedfellows with whoever is in control of the establishment. Well, context is always important, and understanding context, once again, is good. If you look at our politics, in 1962, thereabout, I think PSNJ had 8 seats, and how you call it again, that David Kwesi Jawara equally had 8 seats, but Governor General chose PSNJ to be the chief minister. The chief minister basically ran the legislative council. And that's where the word cross-carpet started, because David Kwesi resigned, and when he resigned, he wanted to make sure he had control. So politicians started crossing carpet from United Party to the other side, and doing so, that's when cross-carpeting started in Gambia. It's called political opportunism. And this has been going on for a long, long time, and we are seeing it today. What does that mean? It means a lot of people in politics are in politics for self-enrichment and personal benefit rather than the collective good. So therefore, our political maturity is still lacking. Our political conviction is still lacking because our politics revolve around people, not issues.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nyang. There's one of my friend Yanko Basao who is asking, can you ask him how can we overcome this problem? But we will come to that. We're going to do the analysis, and we will reserve some time so that Nyang Njie can give us his wisdom, what we can do or what we're supposed to do so that we can overcome some of these problems. Nyang Njie, people are watching you all over the place, and they're commenting, and we will read their comments along the way. But catastrophically, it's a 22 years of virtually retrogression for Gambia. Maybe we can debate here, Jawaras this and all those things. But you said he has this good intention, but we have 22 years that turn Gambia into zombies, the governments into zombies. Nobody knows, because I remember we were saying some of these torturers and killers are foreigners from all over the place. I was even sometimes arguing that myself, that's true, because in Uganda, some of the Malia Mungus crossed from Sudan to Uganda, and they were doing all the killings. But it's our own brethren, it's our own brothers and sisters who were conniving with Gambia, with Yaya Jammeh to do all these things. Nyang Njie. But one thing that baffles me, Yaya is still having support, not only from a region, who thought maybe he helped us to develop, which is contrary, I can argue, because of the killings and the tortures and the detentions and the imprisonment. But from people who will even now, they say, anyway, even Yahya Jammeh's time, that's a big indictment for the contemporary government of this country. What do we learn from 22 years of Yahya Jammeh's brutality?
Yes, you see, context once again is very important. We need to know where Yahya Jammeh came in and where Dawda Kairaba Jawara left off. 1965 to 1978, Gambia didn't have the opportunity to raise money significantly from international donors. Why? Because of the global economy. If you understand, in 1967, there was the Six-Day War in Yom Kippur, which is the Arab-Israeli conflict. The Arab-Israeli conflict led to the Arab boycott or the oil embargo. The oil embargo globally made the global economy to have a downturn, because when the Arabs closed the pipelines, it significantly affected oil prices, and it significantly affected global growth. And this in turn affected donors giving out money. Then 1979, the world got into a bad state, and that state led to famine in Ethiopia and ERP in the Gambia, Economic Recovery Program. So these were trying times. And from 1979 to 1983, 84, 1987 were difficult times for the Gambia, including the 1981 coup d'etat. Then after that, Gambia started recovering in 1989. And the trajectory Gambia took in 1989 to 94, hadn't it been there were no coup d'etat, I think we would have lived in a better Gambia than we are living in today. Then now juxtapose that to Yahya Jammeh. Yahya Jammeh came in 1994 when the Gambian economy was doing good under Dawda Jawara, to the point, even though I don't believe in it, he said Gambia can be transformed to another Singapore. Basically, what Jawara was saying, Gambia and Singapore had independence the same year, and the trajectory that Singapore took, Gambia is beginning to have an upward economic trajectory. But unfortunately, I consider Yahya Jammeh's tenure as arrested development. He came in at the height of Gambia happening to have an economic rebound. Our ports were doing good. Our re-export trade was doing good. Our tourism was bubbling. The only thing we lacked were good infrastructure. But people need to understand, again, economic history to see where Yahya Jammeh started. Yahya Jammeh, when he came in 1994, there was what you call a tech bubble. The global economy was doing good. The stock markets were doing good. Petroleum was doing great. The donor countries were very prosperous, and they were more benevolent to give out. That's why Yahya Jammeh happened to have a lot of resources available to him to do projects of infrastructure-oriented projects. But I always tell Gambians, development is not about tar, that's roads. It's not about street lights. Development is about the human index. What are the human indexes? Good health, good education, access to economic opportunities. That's the soft side of development, but that's the most important part of development. Because you can have great roads and everything, and if the human mind, the human body is not equipped to take advantage of situations, it is meaningless. So Yahya Jammeh's tenure, to be honest, I am an economic historian sometimes, and if I put these two together, I will say that it's an arrested development and a lost opportunity for the Gambia. Why? Yahya Jammeh indoctrinated a whole generation of Gambians, because, mind you, we happen to have a youth explosion in the late 80s, around 87, 88, and it got worse in 1990 to 1993. Why? There was, at first, civil war in Liberia. There was a civil war in Sierra Leone. And an influx of refugees came from Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea, because Guinea's social structure couldn't afford to accommodate what was coming from Liberia and Sierra Leone being part of the Mano River. So they pushed this to the Gambia. Our school systems, our healthcare were overstretched. And we had a lot of youths in the country, people who were born here and people who migrated as refugees. And Yahya Jammeh happened to have an addressable market, a crowd, a group of young people. And it's these young people who have grown 22 years under Jammeh to believe in a failed doctrine that Yahya Jammeh inculcated in their minds. Plus, also, a group of Gambians who were disgruntled with the status quo of 1965 to 1994 and were disgruntled based on what they saw the elite of the time doing. But Yahya Jammeh was a false messiah. Yahya Jammeh was someone who gave Gambians a hope that wasn't real, and this hope was anchored on invoking the emotions of people to hate a certain group of Gambians and said that the misery that they were living was as a cause and consequence of the good lifestyle those people were living, which was false, which was not true, which was unfounded. But unfortunately, that perception that Yahya Jammeh sold became a reality to a lot of Gambians. And that's why Yahya Jammeh had a lot of support from the poorest amongst us, and he had a lot of support from his own ethnic group, because he explained to them how they were marginalized and how those things will be changed. So Yahya Jammeh came in to come and create a new social contract. But his social contract was not based on equity. Yahya Jammeh's social contract was based on retribution. And retribution is not a toolkit to build a country. And that's why we inherited a country that was highly polarized, highly divided. And I was of the view that when President Barrow came, he was going to be a healer to make amends and make sure that the broken social fabric of the Gambia is brought together so that subsequent governments can build a country that is united and happen to have a unity of purpose.
Thank you so much. A false prophet, a dictator, a mad dictator, for that being the case, a liar, but in the transitions that's going to come and bridge that gap and catapult Gambian to another level in our developments fails. Before we go further, Mr. Njie, I will read some of the comments. Mr. Kaba Sanuwo is saying hi. Mr. Janneh, that's Anam Jangom says, Mr. Janneh, please ask him what are the way forward for the Gambia, our homeland. We will definitely. Yankuba says, Mr. Njie was right. 1994, a pound was about $14. 1:14. And Amadou Jammeh also is sending his greetings to you, Mr. Njie. Thank you so much for that elaborate. I'm just going to say it, because pair politics, the UP, that time I don't know anything about Banjul and all those things. It's just when I passed my common entrance, that was the first time I went to Banjul anyway. But in Gunjur, the UP was a very, very popular party there. And there was this, push and pull between the PPP and the UP. And the UP people end up being NCP people, and those NCP people end up being Yahya Jammeh's people. So, this gruntledness continue. We can trace the history and the line, the trajectory that it went, and all those things. But I can say the UP, I wasn't aware, I didn't know Pear, that much anyway, until when I grew up and hearing some stories. But it was very, very famous party in places like Gunjur and all those things. So that tells me he has a lot of support in the protectorate or the Mandinka community, if I will say, in Gunjur. You know, so it's not only the Wolofs, I think, you know, he has a lot of support from Mandinkas also, because I experienced that in the fightings, you know, between the PPPs and the UPs, and a lot of history that came from that in Gunjur, and still people are still hot about some of the marginalization, deliberately the exploitation. So it's not only today, but these things we can trace them back anyway. You know, so yeah, saying that, you know, we thought President Barrow will come, you know, because you said the Gambia will continue to suffer from this deplorable state so long as the clergy, the political class and opinion shapers of our society poses trade that are detrimental toward the collective good. The national state of affairs is a fitting price for our collective attitude. The sooner we change our attitude, the better off we will become. But you went to say our president is to be blamed to a larger extent for the virulent mess we find ourselves in. But then again, the cabal of unconscionable opportunists and leeches have enabled him to be a demagogue. A demagogue. Why do you say that, Mr. Njie? Why do you think, you know, God?
Those are harsh words.
Yes.
And I meant every letter of it. And I believe every letter of it is a reflection of our society. But I want to just go back based on something you just said about UP and their strength. And I will give some comparisons.
Yes.
You see, political messaging is very strong, and political messaging can really deflect reality. P.S. Njie, just not because I am akin to him, history hasn't been fair to him. There are two politicians in Gambia that history hasn't been fair to. Lawyer Ousainou Darboe and P.S. Njie. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you why. P.S. Njie was painted to be a tribalist, which is not true. Mm-hmm. And if you want to debunk that, all you have to do is look at the way and manner the man lived. The man had a hostel in his house, housing kids from the protectorate, including Lawyer Darboe himself and many like Lawyer Darboe, which he not only paid for their tuition, housed them, make sure they had an education, and not only stop at giving them an education, but make sure they proceed for further education or look for an economic opportunity in terms of job seeking in society. P.S. Njie has educated more people from the protectorate than people from Banjul. He has accommodated and housed more people from the protectorate than people from Banjul. I come back to Lawyer Ousainou Darboe. And the reason why I'm saying this is political messaging. Mm-hmm. Yaya Jammeh came out with a slogan, "We don't need old power, we need young man." Mm-hmm. This has resonated to the point. Gambians believe Lawyer Darboe is an old man in politics. But then again, people tend to forget and forget easily. Abdoulaye Wade did more for Senegal than any other president. Mm-hmm. And he came in as an old man. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to justify or anything, but you made a comment about P.S. Njie, and thereafter something went to my mind, and I was just thinking how messaging can be so strong, because you were telling me that he had strong following in the protectorate in places like Gunjur. That's a fact, well known. And most of his friends were from the protectorate. The Numukda Dabos, even Pasanjali Bojang was one of his trusted aides at the time. P.S. Njie was the go-to man in the Gambia at the time. And he was someone who fought for people outside of the political space. When people's rights were infringed upon by the colonials, it was P.S. Njie who got up and dealt with it. That was the kind of person he was. And that gave him affinity with a lot of people from the protectorate. Now back to the question.
Before there, Mr. Njie, I want to amplify that, because my grandfather has a problem with certain businessman in Banjul, and his compound was seized from him. His lawyer was P.S. Njie, and he finally lost his home, and he was homeless. it was Per Njai who hosted him with his family then in and told him, you can stay as long as possible, but the old man couldn't do it. He ended up being in Combos. So yes, but somebody asked. He said, Maria Majuara says, so why he described Mandinkas as 3 M's? Do you want to respond to that, Mr. Njai?
Naturally, look, I am a descendant of Per Njai, and not only you, I ask people to go to my Facebook page and look at my comments about him. I said Per Njai could have been the president of this republic hadn't it been for his arrogance.
Yes, you told. Yes, I saw that. He says
yes. So
he's
look,
a king.
Nyang Njie is not emotional, and Nyang Njie, I don't shy away from the facts. He was an imperfect human being, but with all his imperfections, I think he meant well. But he has made mistakes that were costly, that were dearly, and it affected him going forward. And what people don't know, and there are YouTube videos, there's always a saying that says the tail of the hunt will always glorify the hunter so long as the hunted is not around to tell his or her side of the story. Well, fortunately, there are about 6 videos of PS Njai on YouTube. I implore anyone and everyone to go and listen to them and will understand the man. Per Njai happened to have a personal hatred. I'm sorry to say, but I would call the spade a spade. A personal hatred for Dauda Kairaba Jawara. And that went beyond politics. This is from the mouth of PS Njai, not me. He said at one point he was hired by the British to take care of students from British West Africa and the Caribbean to settle in UK as students. He picked up Dauda Kairaba Jawara from the port in England, in London, and he stayed with him for 3 days before he arranged for him to proceed to Edinburgh in Scotland. And he said he wanted to show him around the city before he left for Scotland. And Jawara's response kind of put him off. This is before both of them entered politics, mind you. This is before they became politicians. This is when PS Njai was studying law or finished studying law in England, and Jawara was going to study veterinary in Scotland. So when they came back, their political rivalry amplified that to another level. When PS Njai left politics, he was a bitter man. He was bitter because he felt that people that he was with betrayed him and traded him for Jawara. So his hatred for Jawara allowed him never to touch the Dalasi to his death. And that shows arrogance. PS Njai will give someone £1 to go to the shop and buy and leave the change at the shop. So when he wants to buy something else, you use it rather than bringing him Dalasis. That's to show you his altruism. PS Njai, I think, suffered from, I would say, personal relevance. You know, he thought his blue-blooded lineage gave him the birthright to be over someone like Dauda Kairaba Jawara. And that's why I said PS Njai's arrogance. I'm sorry, history cannot be changed, and history will be read and seen for what it was. He was a great man, but he had shortcomings. And his shortcomings were more centered around his feelings for Jawara more than his feelings for a group of people. So it had nothing to do with the Mandinkas. He had everything negative about Dauda Jawara. And I'm sorry, that's not me, but that's the man himself. And I implore anyone to go to Facebook, just type, not Facebook, YouTube, type PS Njai, and you will see these videos and you hear from the man himself. But as someone who is related to him, I will say, and I have stated on record, that PS Njai has an altruistic view of himself, and he was an arrogant man based on his utterances, and that I cannot change. That's who he was, unfortunately. But now I will go back to your question. I think this was just an anecdote.
We don't want this to be the 1960s.
It was an anecdote, and it's an anecdote that I don't shy away.
This is historical fact, and we need to bring them up so that some of the misconceptions, because you just imagine the hatred between the Sirif Dibas and the Jawaras. That's because I saw the fightings. I saw because my father, Muhammad Ali, Statual Janneh cross carpet at some point when he had that friction with Jawara to Sirif Diba. I saw the stoning, I saw the insults and all those things, So this can be, is possible. But let's go back to our president is to be blamed to a larger extent for, yes, we said that, and let's transition that, and we have to justify that. You have to justify these things, Nyang Njie,
Yes.
So go on.
See, our president, our current president, Honorable Adama Barrow, His Excellency, I think overwhelming majority of Gambians welcome his coming. Overwhelming majority of Gambians were happy that he came. An overwhelming majority of Gambians saw him as an outsider in the political space. Overwhelming majority of Gambians cling hope onto him that he will help usher in a better Gambia. That hope was the only currency Gambians had to transition from Yahya Jammeh. But unfortunately, all hopes have dashed, because the very reason and essence of us booting Jammeh was to have a transitional government. And Adama Barrow has reneged on his obligations and has reneged on his promise to the people, and he has reneged on the dream that we collectively had as Gambians. And that is what brought us this political nightmare and tussle we found ourselves today. Hadn't it been he just stayed as a transitional figure, he would not have polarized the political space. In today's Gambia, our political space has been highly polarized. But to add insult to injury, Adama Barrow brought in the enablers that entrenched Jammeh to be the drivers of his political machinery. And this is what led us to where we are. And this is what has stalled the growth trajectory that we thought we were going to have post-Jammeh. So I am of the view that Gambia needs to hit the reset button once again. And the reset button is for our political actors to come together irrespective of political affiliation, party, and try and set up a genuine transition. And this genuine transition will come with a broader consensus. It will come with a coalition that believe in a transition. Because what we have today with Adama Barrow is not a transition. The Janneh Commission has failed. Our constitutional review, which is a pillar of this program, has failed. And we have seen what's happening in terms of people who were named in the Janneh Commission as economic vandals and economic enablers of Jammeh being at the helm of our economic programs. It's a shame. We have seen people named adversely in the TRRC still relevant. We have seen political actors like Sidi Njie, who has really put this country to a brink and ended up going to Equatorial Guinea with Jammeh. He is now part of the inner circle of the President Barrow's camp. This, I think, is a blow to all Gambians. This is something that's not helping bringing in a country that was highly polarized, highly divided together. And what he needs to do, if there is any time left, is to help bring Gambia together, because Gambia as is has suffered significantly. And we can say that the transition agenda has failed, and it has failed woefully, and it has failed completely.
Thank you so much, Njie, for that. Before I go, I think I have to agree with you. I think the political narratives has victimized Ba Usenu. he's supposed to be the hero because the first Njaga choice issue. That's the time I switched to support him actually, because the sacrifice there, seeing him sleeping on the corridor outside, for the Gambia, and we forget about all those things. That annoys me a lot, and I agree with that because though he was there before PPP, before UDP, and all the political parties were there before UDP. So the old man syndrome and the drinking of alcohol, I had that during Jammeh's time, and I have friends that influenced them because they thought they are Muslims and all those things. So yes, the narrative has gone against him, and unfortunately, his heroism and fighting for the Gambia is not recognized as it is. Nothing to do with politics, but his personal sacrifice. This is somebody who was perfectly settled in the Gambian context, rich if you want at the African level, even at the world level, and he sacrificed everything, and he is loyal. There's nothing that you can pinpoint negatively to him directly that is so monumental that you can say can ruin his political career after nearly 22 years. The sacrifice, we need to put our hearts out for him, for all those sacrifices and all the other people who sacrifices to make Gambia what it is today. Mr. Nyang Njie, and I like this. That's the economy. You say, hello world, I am the Gambian economy. That's a bit tricky, but it's really, I am in need of jolt or shock of good microeconomic dose and some political confidence to get my wheels in motion. My consumers and investment expectations are waiting for the policy signal or direction from the ex-chair of the Gambian in chief. But you went to say my engine has been on full throttle since January 2017, but my wheels are locked and in need of good lubrication to meet me in motion, to get me in motion. High ticket items on my bucket list to kickstart the economy are tax reform, fiscal consolidation, deeper monetary management, and intermediation, tourism, agriculture, infrastructure. These are things that directly affect, especially the youth, everybody else, but specifically the youth, because the backward syndrome, the economy, there's no employment being generated there. Youths are getting frustrated, the crime rate coming and all those things, because I saw somewhere that you said, these are security issues in terms of the internet. We'll come to the technological aspect of it. And also your interview with Keba Jifan, and I was the burden on the priorities. I was reading that also. You talk about the, you said, once that's the Gambian economy, you said the current government projects that are being funded by the domestic debt included the Banjun project, the Nyomi Hakalan, and I have a lot of Nyominkas here. Maybe they will have some question on that anyway. The government will rely on tax revenue to pay such debt. But according to Nyang Njie, if tax revenue are not enough, the government use debt servicing to pay. And I think I saw somewhere where you are saying serious fiscal reform will only take root in the Gambia when a proper civil service reform agenda is implemented. This will reduce the undue political pressure on our technocrats who are often conflicted between the right things and self-preservation. The enact of the debt legislation ceiling will also tame the excessive appetite of selfish politicians to grow the budget faster than our revenue. Comment on these things. The economy. What is the problem? Is Mr. Mambure don't know what he is doing? Is he a political prisoner? Is Barrow knowing? Oh, who is directing Barrow? Why is he just coalescing with all this self-harm, if I can say? Because then we have changed. All this, the market, things are difficult. Fees is not there. Rice is just going off and all those things anywhere else. And he is coming of these flamboyant things, and the death, both locally, domestic, and internationally, is just going up and up and up and up. We are living beyond our means. Nyang Njie, do you agree?
Well, Gambia has been living way beyond and over its means before December 2016. There was a time our debt to GDP ratio was over 34 to 36%. Meaning, when GRA collect taxes, for every $1 it collected, 33 to 36 butut was just going towards paying debt. Wow. That in itself was a problem. So, is our exchequer doing the right thing? there is what you call political adventurism. Adama Barrow is interested in one thing and one thing alone, to be re-elected. For him to be re-elected, he needs to show people I'm doing things. For him to get those things going, we need to pay for it. For us to pay for it, we need to raise the money. We can raise the money two ways. We either earn it through taxation, then it's monies that we've already earned, we can use and spend, or we borrow. Borrowing has severe and serious consequences. When you borrow money, you have to pay back. When you have to pay back, you are making other expenditure areas suffer, such as agriculture, such as education, such as health. Because before you spend on any one of these, you have to first pay. And that's why we call it a debt burden. Debt is a burden to the economy. Debt is a burden to the Gambian. And debt is a burden to future generations of Gambian. I am from Banjul. I hail from Banjul. But I am not happy that we have spent over $37 million to rehabilitate Banjul, even though it's our seat of power, even though it's our capital. I believe that Banjul needs to be fixed, but Banjul needs a holistic approach, not a makeup or a facelift. Therefore, the monies we spent in Banjul could have been deferred until the government come up with a new master plan of what the city of Banjul should be. Then it becomes a comprehensive, overarching program to rebuild the new city of Banjul, not to just do a makeshift, cosmetic thing of fixing roads and sewage. The problem of Banjul is bigger than roads and sewage, because the problem the city of Banjul happens to have today, land and properties in Banjul are not owned by individuals, but is owned by a collective, because these are traditional historic homes owned by some people, their great-great-grandparents. Their great-grandparents might have had 4 kids. These 4 kids ended up having 16 offsprings. These offspring ended up having 64. So what is owned collectively most of the time is not well taken care of, because no one will invest their funds in it. And that's why Banjul happens to be in the state it found itself, not only the roads, but the dilapidated structures within the city limits. So the government need to come with a comprehensive strategy to fix it. Then we can put in money to make sure we get value for money. But what Adama Barrow is doing is for political end, and that political end is a big price to pay. Just to appease the people, 35 to 37 million has been spent, US dollars. And these are monies that we didn't have. We are borrowing it to pay. And when you borrow to pay, you have a burden on society. And Gambia happened to have a demography of youths that's so high. I can safely say 54% of our population today are made up of youths. These youths, they need access to opportunities. They need economic opportunities, education opportunities. They need good healthcare. They need good education. And these are things that our youths don't have. So I don't support the way we are expanding our infrastructure, national infrastructure portfolio. We are doing it at the expense of the youth folk of this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so important, and that's really is a big concern for this platform, because our youths are dying. You know, our youths are stranded in Turkey. Our youths are stranded in Italy, in all over the places. And there's nothing to regress back to in the Gambia. You know, so they want to cling on to the hopes that they are clinging on. You know, even though it's not working for them or some of them, and still because of the political miscalculation or deliberately the political decisions that the governments are doing, and they are not being accountable to it. They should know better. And Nyanja, you said the Gambians in chief, our country is still at the crossroad of making history or returning to the dark days of stalled growth and retardation. The choice of a trajectory is a collective endeavor, but it requires decisive leadership who treats me as a commonwealth, not a fiefdom for wheeling and dealing. Nepotism and corruption have no place in our quest to start a fresh at first. Better than late, yes. And you said also, for the Gambia, I remain ever true as her diverse people are yearning for better, brighter days to curb the malaise of the back way, tribalism, nepotism, and above all, civil apathy. The Gambia will prosper because no obstacle will be permanent feature on our path of our stride. That's what we're saying is about the corruptions. These are deliberate, and the Gambian, the man in chief, is not talking about, and since this has something to do with the youths, we're going to talk about the influxion, the cascading of drugs in our country. Last time we were talking about mental health with the mental health specialist, the implication of these drugs filtering. I know, we agree there is not all for Gambia, but is in our environment, so anything can happen. And the impact, the frustration, the lack of job creation, and all those things. But Mr. Njie, if I am from Hakala, with all these problems, the road issues, the health issues, the pregnant women to access Banjul is all difficult. How can you convince them that this is not right at this moment? Not the project is not right, but at the moment, we have other things that we need to focus. And might be, we have to have priorities in our development, as a country.
You see, development comes with tears. Development comes with a sacrifice. Development comes with commitments. Like they'll say, if wishes were horses, all beggars will be riding. I wish every nook and cranny of this country is paved. I wish every nook and cranny of this country happens to have a first-class hospital that can do any surgery that can be done anywhere else in the world. But that is just a dream. Leadership is about dealing with the demons. And dealing with the demons needs guts, decisive action, and also be ready to be the bad person. We cannot satisfy all. And yes, the people of Hakaland will take roads over anything else. If I will tell them, the money I am going to give you will give you roads, but I could have used that money to stop the back way. They say, we want roads. It's human nature. So I don't blame them, and it's not their fault. But the leadership at the helm should make sure and must make sure that Gambia first, and putting Gambia first will do what is right for the country, not what is right for a group of Gambians. We need to develop the country holistically, and development should not be skewed to one area and leave the others. Yes, they have been marginalized for too long, but we need to find a sustainable solution to curb and address that marginalization. What leaders do is not to satisfy people. Great leaders do the right thing, and that's what we are lacking in our political space. Our leaders today are trying to induce people to get a return from these people, and this return is called political favors. And political favors is voting for them, but they are doing it at the expense of the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is more important than Adama Barrow getting votes in Hakaland. So for the people from that area, I'm not against your development, but I believe as a good leader, Adama Barrow should have looked at the grand scheme of Gambia's program, not the micro scheme of our development agenda.
Thank you so much. The Hakaland people, we are all with you, and we want your road to be developed anyway. But Gambia is at the crossroad. The young women that are dying, our mothers and sisters on a daily basis, the babies that are being prioritized, whether they will have access to incubators to die or not anyway, because we have all this news where babies are saying, the same babies virtually, you are fine, you are better than the ex, and you have to leave the incubator, and they died. All these things, Mr. Njie, is affecting the youths. All these people, our mothers and sisters that are dying are aged between 16 and 30 years old, and mothers are dying to the extent that women are are thinking twice whether to get pregnant or not, whether to have operation, even if they have life-threatening diseases anyway. So we don't have much time, unfortunately. I'm enjoying this program, and a lot of people are enjoying this program, and they want this to go, but I have to leave Nyang Njie to go. He's a busy man. Anyway, we have only about...
You can have me as long as you want.
No, we will come back again. I'll leave you to go when the time comes anyway. Mr. Njie, how can we, what can we do to address these in the depth that is blossoming all over the place, from domestic to international? And what are the options, for the government, if they will listen anywhere? I don't know whether they will listen, but if they will listen, because we are here for the general good of the Gambia. Maybe the next government will learn from you, and some of these things. That's the whole purpose, and people might understand what are at stake for the Gambia and what option we have.
Well, I will first and foremost state unequivocally that Adama Barrow is working with people who know what it takes to propel the Gambian economy. Their interests are divergent, and their interests are different. If the interest of the nation is put first, I think they have prescription for him to make things happen. And that is, 1, to curb our debt; 2, to spur economic growth; 3, to equip the youth of this country with skills and opportunities to make a meaningful livelihood in the country and add towards our socio-economic development. Therefore, I am of the view that one thing we need to do first and foremost is to rationalize the Gambian budget, and that is called fiscal consolidation, to consolidate the budget. If we have to consolidate the budget, there are 3 critical areas we need to take a look at. One is the government vehicle program. We have a fleet of cars that we have to maintain on a daily basis, buying fuel and maintaining and repairing and paying for drivers to drive, which is undue and unnecessary. The second part is to make sure we not only restructure our debt, but have a legislated debt ceiling, have a law that says that the government of the Gambia in no way can borrow more than 10% of its previous year's budget. So that will tie the hands of the Minister of Finance and the President for their wanton ambition to spend just because of political gains. A good example is the Meet the People tour. Meet the People tour was nothing but a political campaign for Adama Barrow, paid for by the taxpayer. So basically, the Gambian taxpayer gave Adama Barrow a free hand to go and campaign at our expense, not at the expense of NPP. And these are the things we need to fight and stop. And these are the things people like Nyang Njie want to talk about. And sometimes people think that I'm anti-establishment, I'm not for the government. I am the government. Without me, there is no government. Without you, there is no government. So we are not against the government, but we want our government to be on the straight and narrow. Case in point, there is an anti-corruption bill that has been lingering in the House for a long time. So it means the commitment from the government and the legislature is not there to enact an anti-corruption bill when we see and when we know what's happening in country as it relates to corruption. The Gambia we are living in, the Gambia today, can only change and will only change if the leadership believe that this country needs change and is due for a change.
Thank you so much, Nyang Njie. Thanks to Mariam Juare, thanks to our Kinte and Sona Sonko, and Yaya Samure says you are a gem, and we need attitudinal change and serious leadership for a better Gambia. Our Ture Kinte says, and Rohimane says most of our leaders are interested in individual gains rather than the nation as a whole. Mr. Njie, the Treasury bill thing has to come in now. and the implication for Gambians in Treasury bill. I think you can explain that, because sometimes we are all here. We say why not invest in Treasury bill and all those things. What is the implication for that? Because that's why we kind of encourage each other here when we are here. Say no, just go and invest at the Treasury bill and all those things. But these are implications. We need to understand these things, especially from economics like you. Go ahead, Mr. Njie.
You see, the economy, in terms of economic management, we have two set of tools. One is called monetary tools, and the other one is called fiscal tools. Fiscal tools is taxation, how to improve on taxation and others. Monetary tools are the things, interest rates and other things. And treasury bill is a monetary instrument. And this instrument is used by the central bank, or should be used by the central bank, to mop or to collect excess liquidity in the system and make it sterile. What is sterile? Taking it out of the economy. And that will slow down inflation. What does that mean? If the economy is too hot, people are spending, government will float treasury bills. And when you and I buy treasury bill, they're taking away cash from the system and putting it in the vault. And when it's put in the vault, they're reducing expenditures. And when they reduce expenditures, inflation will go down. When inflation goes down, you have what you call price stability. When there is price stability, that's when economic growth will happen. But when there is price instability, you have a spiraling economy, and inflation just takes a nosedive, and we all lose value. And that is what's happening today in the Gambia. Once again, basic commodities are hiking. That spurs inflation, and inflation is not a good recipe for economic growth. So when you and I buy treasury bills, government, instead of making the instrument treasury bill sterile, they spend it. When they spend it, it has a clock. The clock is from 1 day to 365 days. When it's due and mature, they have to pay you your money, or they have to roll it over. So it means, let's say you invest $40,000 in treasury bills. And after 365 days, the government should give you $40,000 plus the T-bill rate. The T-bill rate is about 19% thereabout. So you will have 40,000 times 0.019. So you will have more than 40,000. But when it's due and government is not in a position to pay, they will roll your treasury bill. What it means, your 40,000 plus the interest will be put back on treasury bill, and this exponentially grow our debt. And what people need to understand, is better for Gambia to have a higher external debt than to have a higher domestic debt. Why? Our external debt is owed to multilaterals, the IMF, the World Banks, the Islamic Development Bank, the African Development Bank. When it comes time for Gambia to pay and we cannot pay, we go for what you call debt restructuring. They will defer our debt and give us a breathing space to reorganize our economic house. But when I owe you money, when the government owes you money or owes me money, I don't allow the government to have a free ride on my money. A promise, they give me a promissory note. Nyang Njie will give me 40,000. After 12 months, I will pay. So Nyang Njie is not going to give them debt forgiveness. And that is what our domestic debt is. It puts pressure on the government to pay when these debts are due. And the moment the government is paying, health is suffering, education is suffering, agriculture is suffering, our infrastructure is suffering, because we prioritize paying off the debt first before we spend in those areas. And that's why our economy is suffering, and suffering significantly. So therefore, we need to rationalize our borrowing, and we also need to grow our economy based on tax, not taxation, but growing the economy. Simple case. There's a farm in the Gambia called Radville Farms. Radville export. If you go to Tesco or Carrefour, you are buying produce from the Gambia. Sprouts, baby corn, string bean, mangoes, grown in the Gambia. This farm on average will do nothing less than 4 million pounds a year, growing and exporting commodities. And basically, the government of the Gambia can help replicate at least to have 6, 7 more Radville farms. But this time they need to do it into cooperatives, youth cooperatives, whereby you go into an area, take 20 hectares of land, help these youths. But the way you do it, you bring a farm manager with agricultural expertise. You can go to India, there's so much of them. You can go to Kenya, there's so many of them. They come in, organize these kids into cooperatives. They will grow and their produce will be exported, and you can pay each Gambian kid $600 a month. That's $30,000. Why? Because they're earning in forex and they are sending what you call high value produce because it fetches good money. A simple example, 1 ton of groundnut gives a Gambian farmer $47,000, whereby 1 ton of baby corn being shipped to the US, to UK, will give them nothing less than 4,000 pounds. Think about it. So what is wrong with us not investing in high value produce? That's number one. Number two, Kenya is the closest that sells flowers in the winter months to places like England, Holland. And from Kenya to England is nothing less than 11 hours, 13 hours, when Banjul to Gatwick is only 5.5 hours. And the environment and the temperature here promotes the growing of flowers. It was done in the past up to 1994, where 30 tons of fresh roses and chrysanthemums were exported from Gambia 3 times a week for the British market. And these are the agricultural ventures the government need to put in place. And also our marine life, we need to make sure that our fisheries and our fish sector benefits Gambians. And this is not happening. And to add insult to injury, there is environmental degradation coming along with this. You are from Gunjur. I did a documentary on Gunjur and what Golden Lead has done to Gunjur. But it's all failed government policy and self-centered, putting me before collective. And this is the problem of this country. And this is only happening because we have poor leadership. We need to accept the fact that Adama Barrow is not the solution for a prosperous Gambia. This is outside politics. This is the reality of it. You can support and vote for anybody you want, but Adama Barrow is not the Messiah. Adama Barrow is not the solution. And it's not because I hate him, because he is blind to the fact of how to take Gambia out of the misery we find ourselves. So the direction Adama Barrow is taking Gambia is putting Gambia in a trajectory for gloom and doom.
Trajectory for gloom and doom. Hopefully Gambians are not going to allow that to happen to them second time. We saw the gloom and the dictator, his marks on the Gambia, and still we are suffering from them. Pambuno Moja says, Nyang is a brilliant mind and speak with so much clarity. I admire his candor. Ajafatu Jang says, Salam, my dear brother. And Lamin Kums Manja, my own brother, say, brilliant, Mr. Njie. Mr. Njie, before we wrap it up, the government must disaggregate the GRA back into the component part, that is custom and income tax, by Mr. Sidi Sane. Do you agree, yes or no?
Absolutely. You need to understand one thing. There is what you call tax efficiency. Tax efficiency starts with, for every $1 of tax collected by the government, how much does it cost us to collect it? That's the first analysis you need to do. Is the GRA fit for purpose? And one of the biggest barometers is the tax efficiency ratio. How much is it costing the taxpayer to collect $1 of taxes? If it's more than 4 to 5 bututs, it means it's not efficient. Why is it not efficient? Automation is not being put in high gear, meaning we're not computerizing a lot of things. And when you don't computerize a lot, you allow discretion. When you allow discretion, you breed corruption. Today, if I order a container of, let's say, milk, 40-footer, from the same supplier, you happen to order the same 40-footer from the same supplier, same quantity. I go and pay taxes for duties. I may pay less than you, or you may pay more than me. That is wrong because it's discretionary. And that in itself is not good for pricing in the market, because business people pass on all their costs to their consumers, to the consumer. So GRA, what needs to happen? I was part of the team that wrote the act that gave GRA the mandate to happen, because it was the Sales and Income Tax Act. So the whole idea was to create an apex body called Gambia Revenue Authority. This apex body will be made up by economists, trade experts, accountants, people who understand international trade. And this team will set up targets and monitor two groups. One is called income tax, and the other one is called custom and excise. So once they are given targets, they will make sure they monitor and see whether these two collecting agencies are doing the right thing. But what has happened? GRA has now fused the income tax and customs into one. And the police that's supposed to be policing is now the enforcer, meaning custom is GRA and income tax is GRA. So the people who are setting up targets are the people who are collecting the revenue. That is wrong. So the apex body GRA should stay, and we must disaggregate custom and excise, and equally we must have inland revenue, and inland revenue is income tax. And once we have these two, GRA will be the apex body on the top, monitoring and managing. If not, we will have a moral dilemma, and the moral dilemma is who is policing the police that's policing GRA. And no police is policing GRA but GRA itself, and that is the problem we have today. The custom officer is the enforcer and he is the oversight. That is the fundamental problem as it is today.
Nobody is policing GRA. That's a tragedy, actually. Mr. Nyang Njie, finally, Aja Fatu Jang says Nyang Njie is my president. He says he's not he's political, but he's not partisan. And partisan cannot be a president when you're not partisan anyway. Might be independent. But Nyang Njie, we are the most related people in the Gambia. The whole world. There's nowhere who are as related as Gambians. Speak to any Gambian, one or two words, you will be related somewhere. Is there tribalism there, or is leaders exploiting our emotions? What about our cultural barriers? The clergies, the religious leaders, saying things that are not helpful in our health sector. Why it is like how it is? Why is the simple scenario about the baby corns and the marijuana thing that you said? I want you to say that again. And why is government not doing those things? Nepotism, and corruption that's happening. But tribalism specifically, this is just beyond my mind. Gambians, average Gambians, are so connected. I am a sculptural Janneh. I have the Jadas as my models. I have the Tukulor grandmother and all those things. So in a way, I am a rainbow in myself. My family are in Banjul. They are so named the same blood. They are Wolofs. I am in Gunjur. I speak Mandinka. I am a Mandinka. But we all interconnected all over the place. And still we think tribalism is our problem. Is tribalism actually our problem? Ahmad Manjan says, thank you, Koto Nyang Njie, for gracing our platform. Alia Fatu says, yeah, simply because of our selfishness. And Buba Baju also says, you are right, bro. Respect. I have to cut this because I don't want to hold you here for 2 hours. Nyang Njie, this is the compendium of all our problems, tribalisms and all those things. Is there really a tribalism, or is the leaders just exploiting the loopholes, the colonial baggage that has been given to us as a burden from the founding fathers, and Yaya Jammehs are using, and now Barrow is using? Go ahead, Mr. Nyang.
Well, you had one of your listeners or viewers, I think you called Fatu Jeng, Sejeng, or whatever, said
Yes.
that, well, Nyang Njie, I am highly political, and we all have to be political. I want to come there before I get to your answer.
Yes.
Aristotle once said, we have to get into politics, if not, we will be ruled by our inferiors. Human beings are all political animals. I am highly political, but I'm not partisan. And I will openly say that I have a vote, and come election, I know where to cast my vote. But Nyang Njie has chosen to be an opinion leader in the Gambia. And because of that, I don't want to align with a political party, because it will dilute the message I want to send across political lines and political aisles. So I try to talk to Gambians. And when I do talk to Gambians, I am not sympathetic to a political cause, but I'm sympathetic to a progressive Gambia. And sometimes this puts me in a collision course with certain political establishment. And I am indifferent to how they think, feel, or malign the image and persona of Nyang Njie. So that is it. But now to the issue of how you call it again, the tribalism in the Gambia. Gambians in general, we are highly interrelated to the point. I, Nyang Njie, I have a Nur in my bloodline. I have a Njie in my bloodline. I have a Ba in my bloodline, and I have a C in my bloodline. These are basically my 4 grandparents. So what am I? I'm neither a Wolof, a Tukulor, a Fula, or a Serer. I see myself as a Senegambian, a Gambian nationality of Senegambian origin. That's who I am. Do we suffer from tribalism? I think so, unfortunately. But it's more out of ignorance than something that's deliberate. And the ignorance comes, or have been fueled by political traditions of the past. What is tribalism? Tribalism starts with people thinking that their tribe has superior, their tribe is superior to other tribes, that's one. But in essence, it's just ignorance. Ignorance masquerading in tribe or tribal affinity. But I think any and every Gambian is so interrelated. If we want to say that this is a thoroughbred Mandinka, you are wrong. If you want to say this guy is a thoroughbred Wolof, you are wrong. But the government should help us do away with tribes. The first step is to stop taking census data that is tribally affiliated. What does that mean? For the government to know that we have a population of 40% Mandinkas add no value to the bottom line of this country. For the government to know that 30% of Gambians are Wolof is irrelevant. What's relevant is geographic distribution, where they are, gender distribution, are they male or female, and age. These are the things that must be and should be important to us, but unfortunately, they are not the things that are important. So the government should help us do away with tribe by making sure tribal statistics are not collected. That's the first thing. If you want to change this country, the change must come from government on the issue of tribe. Now, on the issue of marijuana. Marijuana, to be honest, Gambia is not a progressive society. And if you look at our youth population, we have criminalized a lot of youths who otherwise are not criminalized for mere simple possession. What does this mean? It means our reform our correctional systems. Our prisons are filled with kids that are not criminals, but are put there because of a simple possession of marijuana. Now, my advocacy is medicinal marijuana has taken a global dimension. Countries are making a killing out of it. And countries that have become what you call a force mover, who have positioned themselves to be force movers, are now making money. The Botswanas, the Ugandas, the Rwandas of the world are giving out license for exports. Why can't Gambia say that we are going to do one thing? And this is, we have an island called Jinak. The soil is good. It is isolated. We are going to give out licenses to people, and these people will go to Jinak and acquire farms on a collective basis with the locals. The locals already have the expertise. They will grow it there. Not only will they grow it there, customs will be on site on the island. It will be packed with a seal that will not be tampered, and it will be sent for exports from the island to the port or to the airport. And guess what? 1 kilo of medicinal marijuana is about $3,500. That's almost $175,000. 1 kilo of marijuana that we are selling in country today is about $37,000, $40,000. So who will want to sell marijuana locally when they can grow it and sell it for to people who are going to export it? So common sense is not common in the Gambia, and emotions are something that is affecting public policy in the Gambia. People are so emotional to marijuana. And if they understand the history of marijuana, marijuana has been made an illicit drug thanks to big tobacco. Big tobacco lobbied in the 1800s to make sure that marijuana is illegal. And it has happened. And today, globally, once again, big tobacco is paying lobbyists to decriminalize marijuana because they want to get into the marijuana business. Why is it that our governments don't take actions based on what we want, but what they think is mainstream out there, especially international? Gambia, in particular, need leaders who will think out of the box and do things that are not common. And that's why Paul Kagame is a success story and worthy to be emulated.
Gambian leaders who will think out of the box. Gambians need to get out of the box and be thinkers. They don't have to follow the conventional parameters that are set for them by either religious leaders. We have to modernize with time. And our groundnuts are affected by aflatoxin, all those things, and we still insist in doing the same thing, and they are not working. We insist on doing the same thing, but only radical reformers will think like that, Mr. Njie. I'm just gonna close anything now. I promise. I say this, but Brother Ahmed Manjan said, Brother Nyang, can you go on for the rest of the night? And viewers will.
I'll invite Ahmed Manjang over for coffee. We'll have our own session. Good evening, Brother Ahmed. Great guy he is.
Gambian self-acclaimed so-called land boss driver is stuck in the mud with his boss wheel spinning. Mr. Nyang Njie, but I saw you. I think I have to admit that you are completely out of the the box of conventional parameter of intellectuals who are not accessible, because I saw you in your thoughts and in your heart sometimes crossing and exploring the rural Gambia, selling the Gambia outside. I think you're doing better job. You can do better job than CNN, and because they just put rice there and some seafoods there for about 2 minutes. I think yours should feature in and you are going through the balance of the Gambia, across the Bintam Bolong, and Sami Bolong, Sofa Nyama Bolong, Alihina Bolong, Alahin Bolong, Bawo Bolong, Tenda Bolong, all these places, and you are selling the Gambia. The pristine blue rivers that I saw you are traversing all over the place. I hid myself and put my head in shame that, even though I'm from rural Gunjur, not rural anymore, but I don't know any of these places. So this is what Gambians should do. And when I want you to talk about that, I want you to talk about the restaurants that you dignify with your presence and promote them all over the place, the young entrepreneurs and all those things. People need to know these things. People need to follow these things so that they can emulate the role models like you. Also, the cigar with swinging and the weird cars sometimes, you're just a weird do anyway, but your craziness, as I always say, lend you creativity. And we have to thank you for all your love for this country and coming out with bold, not thinking about when I speak, I will lose my position. I will not have government position here and there, but the Gambia that will accommodate all of us, and we will live all freely, and enjoy our life and enjoy that beautiful scenes that we see in the Gambia. I saw you with turtles, in the baby turtles in Gunjur. It's fascinating anyway. Our environment has been disseminated like nobody else. I went there and I couldn't recognize anything in Gunjur anymore. And I was proud here when I was taking my kids to Gunjur Beach so that they can go and swim, and we couldn't do it. What a shame that is. But thank you so much, Mr. Nyang Njie. We so proud of you, definitely. And why you doing all this tourism, so you have to tell us in 2 minutes, and we can close the program. But I think we will invite you because all over the place people are watching you, and the viewership that we have is fantastic. Thank you for really dignifying our platform with your presence and give us one of the stellar analysis of Gambia. We didn't do the technological, but because you've been so frustrated at the technological level, and you even say Gambia is a failed state. I'm going to challenge you on that, but we couldn't go that far. But the environment bit, tell us about the environment. What motivates you to go around and portray the beautiful things in the Gambia that we don't know exist in the Gambia?
Two things. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, JFK. JFK said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That's number one. If you go onto my Facebook page, I put it out there. Nyang Njie is an iconoclast. I am a contrarian. I am not mainstream. And I am indifferent to your perception of who I am. I define my reality, and my reality is the way I express myself. I decided to start what you call Gambia Uncharted. Gambia Uncharted basically is to show people parts unknown about the Gambia, places never visited or places that's not on the map. This cost me money because I pay for them myself. All those productions are courtesy of Nyang Njie, no sponsors. I produce them. I travel with people. I make sure it happens. And that's my contribution towards nation building. When Nyang Njie is insulted online, I laugh. I'm never mad. 3 weeks ago, the t-shirt incident, I did. I think the sad bit about the t-shirt incident was Gambians were so happy that they had a field day to hit on Nyang Njie, and rather they were not looking at the substantive issues behind what Nyang Njie did and why he did what he did. I, Nyang Njie, wanted to steer a conversation, and the conversation centered around COVID. The issue here was Gambia has been having super spreader events before president's commemoration or inaugurating his party. UDP had their Congress. Others had their Congress. The ST was about to have his event. But the issue is, I always tell people, we should not use the opposition as examples. They are governments in waiting. If they choose to have a super spreader event, we will take note of those super spreader events, and we will decide whether they're good enough or fit for purpose to be a government when we have the chance to vote for them. But the president has been elected and been given a mandate to make sure the lives of Gambians are protected, to the point we have what you call a Public Health Act. This Public Health Act make sure that all Gambians are safe, and the president appoints a minister of health, and the minister of health for the president have failed Gambians. The president in himself has failed Gambians by exposing us to COVID-19. And to add insult to injury once again, they put a presser out there a few days ago that effective on the 8th of March, there will be no gatherings, as if COVID-19 is taking a vacation. What an insult to Gambian. And this is my frustration with this administration. And the only reason the president is doing that, he is leaving Banjul for Kantora on the 6th and have an event there. So no way he will leave Kantora on the 6th and come back to Banjul. He will spend the night. On the 7th, he will return to Banjul and close the town. So he is not doing it because of our public health. He is doing it because he wants to wait until his event passes. That is the selfish nature of leadership in this country that we must talk about. But back to the issue of brand Gambia and selling Gambia. I think all Gambians are ambassadors of the brand. We are all a reflection of brand Gambia, and we should always sell the brand if and when there is an opportunity, whether we are at home or abroad. And Nyang Njie sees it as his personal responsibility to sell brand Gambia, and I sell brand Gambia the best way I know how, and that is to expose and showcase our tradition, our culture, you know, our heritage, our sites. And this is what I do through Gambia Uncharted, and I will continue to do this at my own cost, and that is my contribution towards nation building.
If we are called by Barrow today to be the finance minister to fix the country's economy, will you say yes or no? And why no?
Well, I am not being rude, and I am not being full of myself. When you take a job, you should first evaluate whether you can have an impact. If the answer is yes, you must give it your best, and you must do it for the interest of the greater good. For the interest of the greater good, I will love to serve my country, because it's a duty that any patriot should look forward to serve your country. But I don't have to be the minister. Just an advisor, and let the ministers execute, will suffice. Today, if I were to be called by the president to come and partake in nation building in the area of being the Minister of Finance, before accepting the job, I will ask the president if he is willing to do certain reforms within the purview of the Ministry of Finance. If the answer is yes, I will be his by-file to do that, because I know the end result will be beneficial to the greater good. And what are these? Any Minister of Finance that's coming in today, you should tame the budget. You should reduce expenditure, especially in defense and the office of the president. You should make sure that there is debt reduction, and instead of growing our debt. You should make sure that we build centers in Gambia where people can have virtual meetings with anyone in the world, and reduce traveling and per diem. For me, these are instant fixes I'm going to do. If I were to be the Minister of Finance, I will go myself to the Denton Bridge. For every 10 GG vehicles that pass, I will stop 6 and make sure I auction them off. Even if I am to sell them for $1, I will sell them for token $1 and reduce the continuous expenditure of fuel, repairs, and other things. The government of the Gambia need to reorganize itself, and the reorganization starts with our expenditures. And we have a lot of expenditures that are unwarranted, and these expenditures can only be tamed and curbed if the Minister of Finance is willing to hold a knife, bluntly reduce expenditure, starting at the president's household by taking away that $150,000 or $300,000 a day that is allocated for him for his housekeeping or upkeep. When we want to change this country, we need to look at where the fat is. The fat sits at the president's office, and the president, even if the budget allows him to spend $150,000 or $300,000 a day, he should tell the Minister of Finance, this is way too much, reduce it. And that is what you expect from a conscionable human being. Just because it's given to you doesn't mean you have to take it. But yes, I don't mind being part of changing the country, but I don't think President Barrow wants to change the country. President Barrow wants to self-perpetuate, and Nyang Njie will not help anyone self-perpetuate. So I can't see myself walking with him, but I will continue in the spirit of One Gambia to see what I can do to propel the interest of the greater good of my country and my fellow compatriots.
Wato banta fereng time be time jehna, and thank you so much Nyang Njie. Ligue jotna Gambia amna bopam. You know, if we can dignify us with that, and we close our show, and we will bring you here again, because we have a lot to normally we do one hour and more, but we've already covered 2 hours. You know,
wow.
You know, definitely 2 hours, 1 hour 56 minutes so far. So it went so quick, and listeners are calling for you to stay the whole night. You know, but you know, and then Mr. Sule Job and Yankuba keep bombarding me with questions. But Ligue Jotna, why do you think you have some connection with that Ligue Jotna? You know, tell us, you know, because before the Gambia, our homeland, we don't know where it come from, but it's from British anyway. But you know, the Ligue Jotna is a Gambian made, and it's full of wisdom, and it's full of moral lessons that we can refer to, you know, all the time. Go ahead. In 1 minute.
There's a gentleman called Fode Ju. I think he's the composer of Ligue Jotna. But Ligue Jotna is like the Salatul Fatiha of Gambia.
Wow.
If we understand it. Yeah, I'm serious. I mean it. The word start to finish. Ligue Jotna Gambia amna bopam. The first line to the last line. If we live by the spirit of those words, we will not steal from the coffers. We will make Gambia a better place. We will have the pride and dignity to build a better country for all. And we will stand tall to say, I am a Gambian and I am proud to be a Gambian. But in closing, I want to address my people, the Gambian. One thing that has really come out in a very pronounced manner is the vindictiveness and the shallowness of the Gambian. And thanks to social media, we have exposed our vulnerabilities and our weakness as a people. I always tell people one thing: the best thing social media has done is to bring the true colors of the Gambian out. We know each other and we know how we feel about each other, thanks to social media. And all is not well in our country. When I say all is not well, we have a very high imbalance in our social setup, and this imbalance has bring undue hatred to people we don't know, to people we don't associate with, to people we have never encountered, or to people we have never crossed paths. And it's very sad. A small country that should come together, the diverse peoples should come together and forge unity to build a country, are fighting each other, and fighting each other in a very wrong manner that is bringing the interests of our collective down. What can we do? For the Gambia, our homeland should teach us a lot. He said, we pledge our firm allegiance towards man's brotherhood. Gambians should be each other's keeper, not each other's destructor. We haven't done well as a generation. And the saddest bit, we are more educated than our forefathers, but our forefathers were more tolerant and were more genuine than we are as a people. Our forefathers were happy to live in their bankubumos and never look up to the man who had so much, and they cared less, and they were happy for the man that had so much. But Gambia has turned to be a dog-eat-dog environment. It has turned to be a rat race. It has turned whereby parents reward family members with more material possession than the ones without material possession. Our clergy, the imams, are the catalysts and the fuel who are doing these things. Because if poor Nyang Njie happens to have an event at his house, they will not come because Nyang has nothing to give them. If a rich Amadou Janneh happens to have an event, they will not wait for an invitation. They will come. And that's why our social fabric has disintegrated. And it's the duty of the elders of this country to try and take a needle and knit the worn out social fabric of this country, so that Gambia, hopefully in the coming years, will have a Gambia with one people, one aim, one destiny, with a national identity. Up to today, we lack a national identity. What are the core ideals that make up a Gambian? What is Gambianness? These are things we don't have. Our school systems should inculcate this. Our community organization, our community must inculcate the only thing that will take us to where we need to go. Thank you. God bless. And I love you all. One Gambia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Njie. Thank you so much. You've been emotional anyway to listen to this fantastic closing remarks of yours, really speaking. And I'm emotional anyway. The compendium of callers, the tribes, the attitudes, the Gambia that define us, and that land, we have to find a space to include each other, to accommodate each other, so that we can have our Gambia that we are dreaming of. A Gambia, that give a lot to all of us. Let's not, reduce ourselves to disintegrating that Gambia and destroying. We have nowhere. We have no world. We are only going to be in the free societies in other people's country. But that Gambia that gives us everything, and that Gambia says is the mother of the tribes, is the mother of the trees, is the mother of the fishes there, is the mother of the seas, the rivers, and the sands, the red sands, the green vegetables. That Gambia, that's the mother of all our 2 million people. In my Malema voice, let's not allow the clergies, the elderly, who are not going to be here in next 30 years, to destroy that country for us who are here. Please, let's hold each other. We are so interconnected. We are so related. For political selfishness to come and divide us into tribes, into regions, into Mandinkas, but Mandinkas of Badibu, Mandinkas of Kiang, into Wolofs, but Wolofs of Fanafanas, Wolofs of Banjul, Wolof of these, of Fullers of different colors and different attitudes. And that Gambia, that's the mother of all of us, wherever we are. I'm proud of you, Nyang. Gambia is proud of you. One of the finest minds in the Gambia, one of the most accessible intellectuals, and a crazy intellectual, I have to say. Thank you so much for dignifying Gunjur Online. We're so appreciative, and thank you, our good listeners, for being here for 2 hours. This is a lecture that's, kind of the more it goes, the more it becomes so melodious and so interactive. Thank you so much once again, Mr. Njie. We appreciate it on behalf of Gunjur Online and on behalf of our boss, Lamin Jammeh, the technical man. Thank you so much once again. Have a good weekend, Mr. Njie. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Right.
Sponsor a Gambian girl through SAG Foundation. We are placing girls on the path to success through education. Our aim is to realize a Gambia where every girl is given equal access to education to reach their full potential. This is how we do it through our model of affecting generational systematic change. This is Amy. She is not in school, an underprivileged girl excluded from school due to lack of financial support. The SAG Foundation enrolled her into school, and she is equipped with all the essential resources to have a quality education. Amy is now making a difference in her community. Amy is now contributing towards the generational systematic change. Education changes everything for a girl.
Ethnic Isles, ethnicisles.com. Ethnic Isles is a newly launched online store brought to you by Kadijaba to the Senegambian African community. Ethnic Isles will sell all your ethnic products at a reasonable price, just under one click. Visit our friendly online site where you can buy products from clothing, groceries, fashion accessories, African and Caribbean food, all under one roof. Ethnic Isle is also providing a door-to-door delivery service to your families in the Gambia. Tell your friends and families back home, Ethnic Isle is here for easy and hassle-free shopping on www.ethnicisles.com. Any information, contact our friendly admin. We're here to help. Ethnic Isles is our own.